And you were just listening there to the head of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, who delivered his response to the UN General Assembly and that special summit where France will officially recognize Palestinian statehood, co-convened with Saudi Arabia. And you're listening there to the President of France, Emmanuel Macron, currently addressing the session. But Mahmoud Abbas delivered his response to the event via video link, as the Trump administration had refused to grant him a visa to attend the event in person. Let's go straight to our Middle East correspondent, Adam Parsons, who is in Jerusalem for us live and has been listening in. And Adam, we heard there from Mahmoud Abbas. He had to give those remarks via video link because, of course, he wasn't given the permission, the authority, a visa to come here to the UN to give those remarks live. Interestingly, he gave an address where he addressed the international community, where he spoke directly to Israel, but he also spoke about Hamas needing to disarm.
Yeah, it was a very interesting speech. I mean, it is curious that he's a lot nearer me than he is you for this UN meeting. But I think Mahmoud Abbas was trying to position himself here as being a conciliatory figure. Now, he is, in the eyes of many people, of course, in Israel, utterly unacceptable. And yet, right at the end there, he wished them a Happy New Year. It's Rosh Hashanah here in Israel. He said he wanted to speak directly to the Israelis. He spoke about a new generation. And I think that address was peppered with references to what he will consider to be a much more conciliatory tone, including the idea of disarming, and prominently within it, him saying that Hamas will play no part at all in any governance structure, that the Palestinian Authority will oversee reforms and that it will hold elections, that these will be to international norms, and that they will create a society which is based on equality, on equal rights, on peace. So clearly, the Israeli government will think that this is tosh, and that their long-running opinion that they cannot trust Mr. Abbas won't change at all. I mean, obviously, the Israelis are not in this meeting, neither are the United States. But I don't think we can get away from the fact that over the past hour or so, we have seen France recognise the state of Palestine, following on from the UK and Canada and Australia doing this so very publicly. We've seen Antonio Guterres welcoming this, but also criticising the Americans for not allowing visas for Mahmoud Abbas and his team. We've seen the Saudis standing up and talking about a two-state solution. It feels, doesn't it, as if this is significant diplomacy that is happening at the start of this UN meeting, and for it to be finished off with Mahmoud Abbas addressing this room, to getting the warm applause that he did, I think that will ripple through the diplomacy that is to come, not least when Arab leaders meet with Donald Trump tomorrow. Let's remember, the Americans were not in the room tomorrow. We're not in the room either for this meeting, but Mr. Trump holds such power here as the bridge between the Israelis and pretty much the rest of the world.
Indeed, very much so. Adam, thank you so much for that update. And as Adam was saying there, it's a big week for diplomacy. Over the next 5 days, world leaders will gather here to discuss the issues affecting global security. Top of the agenda are the active wars in Gaza, Ukraine and Sudan. And today, Gaza and the recognition of a Palestinian state was the big theme. French President Emmanuel Macron and the Saudi Foreign Minister Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud chaired an event here to discuss the two-state solution. You heard some of it there, and you can see some of those live images now. Let's just have a little listen to what was said earlier.
Rien ne justifie plus la poursuite de la guerre à Gaza. Nothing justifies the ongoing war in Gaza. Nothing. On the contrary, everything compels us to definitively end it, since we didn't do it earlier. We must do this to save lives. This is the very reason today, here in this chamber, we must pave the way for peace, because since July last year, developments have accelerated, and at this point, we have reason to fear that the Abraham Accord, the Camp David Accords, could be called into question by Israel, and that peace would become impossible for a long time yet in the Middle East. It thus falls to us this historic responsibility. We must do everything within our power to preserve the very possibility of a two-state solution. Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace and security. The time has come. This is why, true to the historic commitment of my country to the Middle East, to peace between the Israelis and Palestinians, this is why I declare that today, France recognises the state of Palestine.
That was French President Emmanuel Macron speaking at the event there. Well, that event came after the UK recognised Palestine as a state, stressing it was not a reward for Hamas. The UK says a Palestinian state should include Gaza and the West Bank, with Jerusalem as the capital shared with Israel. Canada, Australia and Portugal also officially recognised Palestinian statehood yesterday. Mexico did so in March of this year, while several others adopted formal recognition after the war in Gaza began in 2023. Today, they were joined by France and others, meaning more than three-quarters of the United Nations' 193 member states now recognise Palestinian statehood. But there are some big outliers. The United States, Germany, Italy, Japan and South Korea, 5 of the powerful G20 countries, still don't recognise Palestine. And while Palestinians are hopeful, they know a symbolic statement won't be enough. Have a listen.
احنا بنتأمل من كل دول العالم إنها تعترف بالقضية الفلسطينية.
We hope that all countries around the world will recognise the Palestinian cause, including us, the displaced people from Jenin refugee camp. We hope the world acknowledges us because our future, as residents of the camp, remains uncertain. A few metres separate us from our home and we can't reach our homes, and we are deprived of so many rights. We call on all of the world to recognise our existence.
It's a step in the right direction, even if it came late, especially from influential countries like France and the UK, which are permanent members of the UN Security Council. But what we want is not just a symbolic or nominal state. We want a fully sovereign state that preserves its borders. We demand a Palestinian state based on the borders of June the 5th, 1967.
All of this recognition in the end is meaningless. You're talking nonsense about recognition while we're still under occupation. When you recognise me, you have to stand with me and you have to end my suffering. We're displaced from our homes. We're talking about nearly 22,000 people who've been forced from their homes. Return them to their homes first, then talk about recognition, and say that we have reached an agreement with the European Union that what's happening here is wrong. In the end, everything that's happening is just ink on paper.
There were some voices there from the West Bank today. I'm joined now by Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, Danny Danon. Ambassador Danon, it's good to see you. I just want to get your reaction to this summit and the events that have taken place, frankly, in the last 24 hours.
Well, it wasn't a summit, it was a theater. It was a show, detached from reality. While we still have 48 hostages in the dungeons in Gaza, we saw President Macron celebrating here. We know it's not going to promote anything on the ground. It's empty declarations, will not promote peace. On the contrary, it actually encouraged terrorism. I saw the statement of Hamas praising this conference, and I saw the statement of the Hamas saying that the fruit of October 7th are those declarations. So we will continue to focus on bringing the hostages back and eliminating Hamas and creating a new reality without Hamas in Gaza.
Ambassador, you say that this is far from reality, but your closest allies, people who have countries that have been friends of Israel for decades, Australia, Canada, France, all standing now and saying your actions are so removed from the reality that the operations and onslaught in Gaza is unacceptable. We heard French President Macron say that this is about peace, not an ongoing onslaught and the killing of Palestinians.
Well, maybe it's about domestic interest of President Macron in France that he doesn't want to address, so he comes to the UN. But you know, so many leaders spoke about an era without Hamas, or disarmament of Hamas. And I want to ask them, who is actually going to take care of that? Maybe the statement will influence Hamas, or a letter from the Elysee Palace that will come to Gaza. It's ridiculous. We all know that the only one with actually fighting Hamas is us. The responsibility is on our shoulders to remove Hamas from the equation and create a better reality, not only for Israelis, but for the Palestinians themselves. There is no future for the Palestinian if Hamas will stay in control. We can all agree about that. But coming here, putting this show, you know, it's ridiculous.
Well, they gave an ultimatum to Israel: stop the killing of Palestinians and we won't go down the Palestinian statehood path. And yet the killings haven't stopped. More than 65,000 Palestinians have now been killed in Gaza as a result of the operations of the last 2 years, frankly. Number of hostages have been killed in those operations as well. And now you have Israel's staunchest allies and partners saying enough is enough. Has the Israeli government completely isolated itself?
Well, those numbers, you know, came from Hamas spokesperson, and we don't accept them.
Those numbers are globally now recognized.
Well, because
in fact, some are saying they're conservative.
They accepted the Hamas reports. And second thing, we have a war. We didn't start this war. It was brought upon us 2 years ago. It is a long war because we have to make sure we minimize civilian casualties. We could have finished this war very fast, but we have to take precautions. For example, now we're calling for the people of Gaza City to move to the south. And by the way, they are actually doing that. And that's why Hamas is upset, because they threatened the people of the city of Gaza not to move out, but the people of Gaza are smarter. They are moving out to the south, and that will enable us to continue to put pressure on Hamas. So you have in the world those who will come and deliver empty speeches, and you have Israel that doing the dirty work. We fought against Hezbollah in Lebanon. We fought against the Iranian regime, the Houthis in Yemen, and we are the only one who are fighting Hamas.
Ambassador, let's not deflect on the other wars of the last year and a half or so. Let's talk about the displacement, because the displacement of people, the attack on civilians, UN reports have now said that Israel's actions are tantamount to a genocide. They've described the situation on the ground as genocide. They've accused Israel of creating a man-made famine that was preventable. So you can say that, you know, Israel's actions are to protect civilians, but UN reports are accusing you of genocide.
That's a lie. That's a blood libel. And even the Secretary General, who is not a friend of Israel in the last 2 years, said you cannot call it a genocide. It's a legal term, genocide. You have to prove intention. The last thing we have is the intention to hurt civilians. On the contrary, we risk soldiers' lives every day because we don't want to hurt civilians. But, you know, it's so easy to come and blame Israel. But after October 7th, we learned the lesson. No one will protect us. The days when Jews were massacred, and here in the UN and other places, no one picked a finger, are over. Today we have an independent country, we have our own military, and we're going to fight back. And those Hamas leaders who orchestrated this attack will not stay with us. And we will create a better future, not only for us, but also for the people of Gaza.
What is your solution to this, Ambassador? Because we've seen your partners, allies come out and try and create some kind of solution. What is your solution?
Well, you will agree with me that any future solution requires the removal of Hamas from the equation. You can agree with that?
Which is what Mahmoud Abbas has just said, which is what Emmanuel Macron has said, which is what the leader of the UK and Australia and Canada has
Who exactly is going to remove Hamas from that?
Well, you've even got Israeli IDF soldiers.
I asked you a question. I asked you a question. Who is going to make sure that Hamas is not part of the equation? The UN, the EU, the UK,
Danon.
France? I can name all those
Ambassador
empty
Danon.
speeches. Who is going to do that?
Ambassador Danon,
let me know.
You've got soldiers.
You have no answer for that.
No,
because
IDF,
no one has an answer for that.
IDF soldiers have said they no longer know what the point of this war is.
You have asked me hundreds of questions in the last 2 years. I'm asking you one question, and you cannot answer that. Who is going to remove Hamas out of Gaza?
Are you saying that Hamas has not been decapitated? Because soldiers on the ground are saying they don't know what the point of this war is anymore.
I'm saying that only us. The burden is on our shoulders. The hypocrisy here, you know,
you've got
staggering.
Thousands of Israelis on the street asking you to stop this war so that the hostages can come home. You've got mediators in Qatar now a victim of Israelis bombing and airstrikes inside Qatar.
How can you you cannot call Hamas terrorist victims?
No, I'm not talking about Hamas being victims. I'm talking about the state of Qatar, a sovereign state that was sitting across from you, trying to come up with some kind of deal, a ceasefire deal, now becoming a victim of airstrikes in their country.
No, the attack was a Hamas terrorist against them, and it's legitimate. The same way the US attacked Osama bin Laden in Pakistan, everyone praised the US. When the UK attacked ISIS in Syria, everyone praised the UK. When France attacked terrorists in Africa, in Burkina Faso or Mali, everyone praised France. But when Israel is attacking terrorists, we are being condemned.
So are you saying...
Enough with the hypocrisy.
Are you saying
enough with the double standards.
Are we saying the bombings that we continue to see in Gaza, this is an indefinite state of play
Absolutely
now?
not. We have no intention to stay in Gaza. And I want to remind you that we left Gaza completely. 20 years ago, we gave the keys to the Palestinians. We took out the communities, the so-called settlement, and we told them, build your own future, promote coexistence. Look what happened. Hamas took over Gaza, and then they attacked us. So we don't want to stay there. We have no intention to stay there, but we will leave when we will know that Hamas is not there. We cannot leave Hamas to stay in power. Everyone in this building knows that fact, but they tend to ignore it, and it's easier to come and blame Israel rather than to find a solution. How can we remove Hamas from Gaza?
Ambassador Danon, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Well, that was Ambassador Danny Danon. And as we said, Israel and the United States are not at that summit currently taking place. Earlier today in London, there was a flag-raising ceremony marking the Palestinian mission's shift to becoming an embassy. Now, crowds cheered as the flag went up in Hammersmith. The Palestinian ambassador to the UK, Hussam Zomlot, said the official transition to an embassy will be complete after legal and bureaucratic work is finalised. Mr. Zomlot spoke to Sky correspondent Sadia Chowdhury.
This is about time that historic wrongs are corrected, that wrongs are righted, and Britain has committed the gravest of historic injustices against the Palestinian people, promising our land away and turning us the ancient people of Palestine, the cradle of civilizations, the birthplace of Christianity, holy to all religions, turn us into communities, and then overseeing that process of our Nakba, of our ethnic cleansing during the mandate. That was a huge, grave injustice against us. So the significance of today and the recognition is more about Britain and the British people, that today they want to correct history, today they want to right the wrongs, and today they want to start on a different path whereby the recognition of a state will be followed. It's just the beginning. This is not a destination, it's not a goal, it's merely a first step towards actually establishing the state of Palestine, a state that can protect its people, that can represent its people, that can provide for its people, that will be democratic and that will be a pride. And once again, as Palestine has always been a bridge between East and West and a minaret among civilizations.
Look, there's a flag, there's a plaque, but is it actually going to make a difference to the Palestinian people?
Of course, my friend, for decades, this office was dealt with not as a diplomatic mission that represents a state and a nation. It was dealt with not in a diplomatic manner. Now, an embassy of the state of Palestine means that there is equity in the relationship between two states, the state of Palestine and Britain. And from there, we move to build our bilateral relationship based on equality and equity. We are equal partners. And from there, we build our partnership in the international arena, in the UN and the global system. And there, we build the steps that the UK government must take to make sure that the illegalities end, that Palestine is established, that the genocide had ended, that the war criminals are held accountable, that weapons are not sent to Israel to be used in the killing of children and people and destruction of homes, that illegal settlement products are banned from arriving to the UK. The list is long, but we must begin. That's why I said earlier, let work begin. This is just a starting gun, a starting point for a workshop to follow and for a lot of work. And I'm so inspired to see so many people around us here from all over the UK representing all the shades of the United Kingdom. I am assured by the British people, I am absolutely assured by the intensity of love and feeling and solidarity with Palestine. I've seen it for the last so many years. I've seen it in the last 2 years. I've seen every week, every day, hundreds of thousands in the streets of London, Manchester, in Northern Ireland, in Scotland, in Wales, everywhere. And this power of people, this energy, I am absolutely certain will get us where we want to be.
That was the Palestinian ambassador to the UK, Hussam Zumlot. Well, let's bring in our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn, who's here with me live at the United Nations. I mean, Dom, it's been quite an intense day. You know, it's sort of difficult to, I guess, overstate the intensity for the Israelis, for the Palestinians, the emotion around this. This is such a divisive issue, and to see France hold this summit, frankly, it was really difficult for the Israeli ambassador to stomach.
Yeah, I mean, I was in the hall as the French president, first of all, sort of toured the hall before the debate began, and he was sort of hugging people and gathering sort of support. And he was very much the man of the moment, the Saudis sort of in his slipstream, if you like. And then when he said the time has come for France to recognise Palestine, there were cheers in this hall, as there have been in London, as the flag was raised over the new Palestinian embassy there, and in towns across France. We talk about it being just symbolic, but the phrase just symbolic doesn't really work in the Middle East, of course, because symbols are so powerful, going right back to the dawn of religions there. Those symbols are things that people fight and die for. And so the symbolism here, I think, of France and Britain in particular recognising Palestine is very powerful, because, of course, France and Britain are the countries that carved up the region in the Sykes-Picot Agreement. The British promised Palestine to the Arabs, and then the Jews in the Balfour Declaration, and of course agreed with the French that they would operate it as a kind of internationally controlled area. So very contradictory promises from Britain. So for Palestinians, to see the French and the British, who, Arabs and people across the Middle East blame for so much of the Middle East problems, this is very, very powerful. And of course, to see Macron in the hall without the Americans, without the Israelis, I think shows how much the Israelis have been cut out of this and how they are diplomatic pariahs on a day like this. And of course, the Israelis are saying that this is actually just rewarding terrorism. The supporters of this move, Britain, France, and the other countries that have joined France and Britain and Saudi Arabia on this, so it's actually rewarding diplomacy. I think the problem for Israel is, if you think about where we were a year ago, the Israelis, during this same week, bombed Hassan Nasrallah and killed him. And that was really sort of the beginning, not the beginning, but very much part of the evolution of Israel as a regional military hegemon. But there's a limit to what military power can get you. If you can't match it with powerful diplomacy as well, you're going to be hamstrung. And I think the result of that is what we're seeing today. The Israelis may be all-powerful in a military sense, but they're getting more and more ostracized in a diplomatic sense. Yes, they have the American president on their side at the moment, but if you look at opinion polls in America, things are shifting against them as well amongst Americans in general, and particularly the younger people. So they are facing a lot of difficulty, I think, diplomatically in the long run, and certainly today is what they've seen in the hall here. Things are moving against them. This war is increasingly unpopular. This alleged genocide is increasingly unpopular around the world, and that's putting them in a diplomatic bind.
Yeah, indeed. Dom, thank you as always for all of your analysis there. Now you're watching The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Still to come on the programme. Already feeling threatened, Hong Kong exiles in Britain reveal what they fear could soon put them in more danger.
secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away.
So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
I want to start the programme today with a name, a story that I can't get out of my head. The campaign has now started. This is your chance. Tell people. This is the Politics Hub. It's not correct. The tax burden is projected to go up.
No,
but I'm not. This is my interview. Look, this is ridiculous.
No one does care about us.
I'm really interested in that. On the Politics Hub, we like to push the boundaries. He's got the majority. The question is, what is he going to do with it?
I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories.
This is insane.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa. I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
We call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Welcome back to the programme. Well, we're expecting to hear from Donald Trump, a significant announcement. He's expected to link autism to over-the-counter pain medication taken during pregnancy. Just have a listen to what we've been hearing from the President and the White House.
We're going to have one of the biggest announcements, really medically, I think, in the history of our country. We're going to be doing it with Bobby and Oz and all of the professionals. I think you're going to find it to be amazing. I think we found an answer to autism. How about that? Autism.
Women for many years, in fact for decades, Ed, have been confused by the rapid increase in autism in this country. In the childhood epidemic, that is chronic epidemic, disease epidemic that is plaguing America's youth. Women are confused about that and they want answers to that. And that's exactly what this administration is focused on finding. And before you jump to conclusions based on reports that the White House has not even confirmed, I would encourage everyone in this room to go into the 4 o'clock announcement with some critical thinking skills and with some open ears to actually listen to what the president and his team of outsiders have to say about this.
That was Caroline Levitt, and before her we heard from President Trump. Well, we'll bring you that announcement live from the White House as soon as it begins. Now, more breaking news here in the US tonight. Jimmy Kimmel's late night show is to return to the airwaves. Disney-owned TV network ABC suspended the program after Kimmel's highly criticized comments about the assassination of right-wing activist Charlie Kirk. Disney released this statement last Wednesday. We made the decision to suspend production on the show to avoid further inflaming a tense situation at an emotional moment for our country. It is a decision we made because we felt some of those comments were ill-timed and thus insensitive. We have spent the last days having thoughtful conversations with Jimmy, and after those conversations, we reached the decision to return the show on Tuesday. Well, there was a swift and furious reaction to Kimmel's remarks last week, especially among leading figures in the Trump administration and wider MAGA movement. Pressure built further when 2 of ABC's largest affiliate network owners said they'd pull Kimmel's show from all of their TV stations. Fellow comedians, though, jumped to his defense. Now we're going to look at the Hong Kong exiles who've described to Sky News how they live in fear in Britain. Already glancing over their shoulder, they worry a so-called mega embassy that China wants to build in central London would put them in even more danger. The government will decide soon if it can go ahead. Our Home Affairs reporter Henry Vaughan has the story.
If I can't tell people where I live, I can't bring my friend to my home. I have to be really careful. When I moved to the UK, I thought it would be a safe haven for activists to speak out against the Chinese authorities far away. But eventually, the result is, even if I escaped to the UK, the Hong Kong authorities could still do something to me.
20-year-old Chloe Chung is a wanted woman with a bounty of $1 million Hong Kong dollars for her arrest for speaking out against the Chinese regime. Chloe was just 14 when she joined mass protests that erupted in Hong Kong in 2019, but even after fleeing to the UK, she doesn't feel safe.
I had to change my route every day. I had to, look back on my shoulder every day, and I have to, look at reflections on mirror on the street to make sure that no one is actually following me. I have to really be careful when I met new people because I don't know whether they're spy, but I think the UK police and the UK government can do more.
Chloe is among 34 Hong Kongers in exile charged with national security offences. 13 are believed to be in the UK, where China wants to build a new mega embassy, its biggest in Europe, if the British government grants permission next month.
I don't think the UK government should give them more space, more resources, more people to build their surveillance and spy hub in central London in the UK, right next to the Tower Bridge, a historical site. And, for me as an activist that are actively being targeted by the Hong Kong authorities, I am genuinely concerned on what would happen when they have more people that they could send to follow me, to intimidate me and to harass me. If anything happened to us, or if anything happened to the UK because of this mega embassy, they are the one to blame.
China wants to build its new base in historic central London between the financial hubs of the city and Canary Wharf. In 2022, Tower Hamlets Council rejected the plans, but 2 weeks after Keir Starmer came to power, Beijing resubmitted the application. He sought closer relations with China than his predecessors. But campaigners are worried that parts of the embassy plans that were redacted could be used for surveillance. The Met Police say it takes transnational repression extremely seriously, but Finn Lau believes he's already been targeted on the streets in West London.
I was beaten to the floor. I thought I lost my right eye already because it was so painful. I don't know how long I've passed out on the street, perhaps maybe 20 minutes, maybe longer, but then I think they thought I was dead, so that's why they stopped it. There was no way to identify who they are because they were fully masked, but there are different kind of circumstantial evidences related to that incident. I would say is getting more and more likely that is directly related to the Chinese Communist Party.
Hong Kong Chief Executive John Lee has said Finn and other leading activists will be pursued for life.
In a nutshell, I don't feel safe in the UK. And if the UK government grant a green light towards the Chinese embassy plan, it seems like the UK government is rewarding Beijing for its transnational repression towards dissidents here.
Mega embassy, go away. Not in London, not today.
China's London embassy says claims the embassy would pose a security risk to the UK are completely groundless. They say attempts to influence the British government's decision on the embassy are despicable and will not succeed. The Hong Kong activists want the British state to do more to protect them, but with Beijing's growing power, they fear authorities won't be able to do enough to keep them safe. Henry Vaughan, Sky News.
Stay with us. Lots more coming up on the world, including we'll be going to cross live to the White House, where President Trump is expected to make that big announcement advising women not to take paracetamol during pregnancy. We're waiting for that press conference to begin any minute now.
much. So I've been waiting for this meeting for 20 years, actually. And it's not that everything's 100% understood.
You're listening there to President Trump in the Roosevelt Room, and he's just about to make a massive announcement about autism. Let's just have a listen.
America's top medical and public health professionals as we announce historic steps to confront the crisis of autism. Horrible, horrible crisis. I want to thank the man who brought this issue to the forefront of American politics along with me. And we actually met in my office, is it like 20 years ago, Bobby? It's probably 20 years ago in New York. I was a developer, as you probably heard, and I always had very strong feelings about autism and how it happened and where it came from. And he and I don't know, the word got out, and I wouldn't say that people were very understanding of where we were, but it's turning out that we understood a lot more than a lot of people who studied it, we think. And I say we think because I don't think they were really letting the public know what they knew. Thanks as well to the director of the National Institute of Health, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, FDA Commissioner Dr. Marty McCary. These are great people. Administrator of the Centers for Medicine and Medicaid Services, Dr. Mehmet Oz, and Acting Assistant Secretary of HHS, Dr. Dorothy Fink. So thank you all. Thank you, Dorothy, very much. The meteoric rise in autism is among the most alarming public health developments in history. There's never been anything like this. Just a few decades ago, 1 in 10,000 children had autism. So that's not a long time. And I've always heard, you know, they say a few, but I think it's a lot less time than that. It used to be 1 in 20,000, then 1 in 10,000. And I would say that's probably 18 years ago. And now it's 1 in 31, but in some areas it's much worse than that, if you can believe it, 1 in 31. And I gave numbers yesterday. For boys, it's 1 in 12. I was told that's in California where they have for some reason, a more severe problem. But whether it's 1 in 12 or 1 in 31, can you imagine? That's down from 1 in 20,000, then 1 in 10,000. And now we're at the level of 1 in 12 in some cases for boys. 1 in 31 overall. So since 2000, autism rates have surged by much more than 400%. Instead of attacking those who ask questions, everyone should be grateful for those who are trying to get the answers to this complex situation. And the first day all of these great doctors behind me were there, I told them this is what we have to find out. Because when you go from 20,000 to 10,000, and then you go to 12, you know there's something artificial. They're taking something. And by the way, I think I can say that there are certain groups of people that don't take vaccines and don't take any pills that have no autism. That have no autism. Does that tell you something? That's currently, is that a correct statement, by the way?
There are some studies that suggest that, yeah, with the Amish, for example.
The Amish, yeah, virtually. I heard none. See, Bobby wants to be very careful with what he says, and he should, but I'm not so careful with what I say. But you have certain groups. The Amish, as an example, they have essentially no autism. First, effective immediately, the FDA will be notifying physicians that the use of well, let's see how we say that. Acetaminophen. Is that okay? Which is basically commonly known as Tylenol, during pregnancy can be associated with a very increased risk of autism. So taking Tylenol is not good. All right, I'll say it. It's not good. For this reason, they are strongly recommending that women limit Tylenol use during pregnancy unless medically necessary. That's, for instance, in cases of extremely high fever,
that you feel you can't tough it out, you can't do it. I guess there's that. It's a small number of cases, I think. But if you can't tough it out, if you can't do it, that's what you're going to have to do. You'll take a Tylenol, but it'll be very sparingly. It can be something that's very dangerous to the woman's health. In other words, a fever that's very, very dangerous, and ideally a doctor's decision, because I think you shouldn't take it. And you shouldn't take it during the entire pregnancy. They may tell you that toward the end of the pregnancy, you shouldn't take it during the entire. And you shouldn't give the child a Tylenol every time he's born and he goes and has a shot. You shouldn't give a Tylenol to that child. All pregnant women should talk to their doctors for more information about limiting the use of this medication while pregnant. So ideally, you don't take it at all, but if you can't tough it out, if there's a problem, you're going to end up doing it. The other thing that I can tell you that I'll say that they will maybe say at a little bit later date, but I think when you go for the shot, you do it over a 5-time period. Take it over 5 times or 4 times, but you take it in smaller doses and you spread it out over a period of years. And they pump so much stuff into those beautiful little babies. It's a disgrace. I don't see it. I think it's very bad. They're pumping, it looks like they're pumping into a horse. You have a little child, little fragile child, and you get a vat of 80 different vaccines, I guess, 80 different blends, and they pump it in. So ideally, a woman won't take Tylenol. And on the vaccines, it would be good instead of one visit where they pump the baby, load it up with stuff, you'll do it over a period of 4 times or 5 times. I've been so into this issue for so many years just because I couldn't understand how a thing like this could happen. And it's artificially induced. It's not like something that when you go from all of those, healthy babies to a point where I don't even know structurally if a country can afford it. And that's the least of the problems. To have families destroyed over this is just so terrible. I also, and we've already done this, we want no mercury in the vaccine. We want no aluminum in the vaccine. The MMR, I think, should be taken separately. This is based on what I feel, the mumps, measles, and all the 3 should be taken separately. And it seems to be that when you mix them, there could be a problem. So there's no downside in taking them separately. In fact, they think it's better, so let it be separate. The chicken pox is already separate, because when that got mixed in, I guess they made it 4 for a while, it really was bad. So they make chicken pox. Individually, they're okay. When you mix them, something maybe happens. So there's no downside in doing it. It's not like, if you do it, bad things. No, it's only good side. And it may not have that much of an impact, but it may have a big impact. So let those be taken separately. And then hepatitis B is sexually transmitted. There's no reason to give a baby that's almost just born hepatitis B. So I would say wait till the baby is 12 years old and formed and take hepatitis B. And I think if you do those things, it's going to be a whole different, it's going to be a revolution in a positive sense in the country. The FDA will be updating the label of an existing drug to reflect potential benefits in reducing some autism symptoms. This gives hope to the many parents with autistic children that it may be possible to improve their lives. That's one of the things that I'm very, very happy about. I mean, this was mostly going to be on how not to have the child affected, but we've learned some pretty good things about certain elements of genius that can be given to a baby, and the baby can get better, and in some cases maybe substantially better. Not going to be easy, but be a lot easier if it didn't happen in the first place, as these great parents fully understand, right? They fully understand. I feel so terribly I have so many friends with autistic children. It's a tough situation. Finally, to help reach the ultimate goal of ending the autism fever, the NIH will be announcing 13 major grant awards from the Autism Data Science Initiatives. And to be honest with you, to me, that's the least important. It's not even a money thing at this point. There's so much money, but they have to do, and they have to move quickly. When the alternative is that nothing bad can happen, let's do it now. I was just saying to Bobby and the group, let's do it now. Nothing bad can happen. It can only good happen. But with Tylenol, don't take it. Don't take it. And if you can't live, if your fever is so bad, you have to take one because there's no alternative to that. Sadly, first question, what can you take instead? It's actually, there's not an alternative to that. And as you know, other of the medicines are absolutely proven bad. I mean, they've been proven bad with the aspirins and the Advils and others, right? And they've been proven bad. So I'd like to ask Bobby to get up to the podium and say a few words, and then Dr. Bhattacharya and Dr. McCary, Dr. Oz, Dr. Fink, followed by two incredible mothers that have experienced firsthand what this country is going through, what parts of the world are going through. And I will say there are parts of the world that don't take Tylenol. I mean, there's a rumor, and I don't know if it's so or not, that Cuba, they don't have Tylenol because they don't have the money for Tylenol, and they have virtually no autism, okay? Tell me about that one. And there are other parts of the world where they don't have Tylenol, where they don't have autism. That tells you a lot. And I want to say it right now. And, you know, the way I look at it, don't take it. Don't take it. There's no downside in not taking it. So I'd like to ask Bobby to come up and say a few words. I hope I didn't ruin his day, but that's the way I feel. I've been very strong on the subject for a long time. You know, life is common sense, too. And there's a lot of common sense in this, and I wish things like this were brought up, and this group has worked so hard on it, but I'd like to be a little bit more, a little speedier in the process of a recommendation, because there's no harm in going quicker. There's absolutely no harm. At worst, there's no harm. Thank you very much. Bobby, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. To meet the President's challenge, I ordered HHS to launch an unprecedented all-agency effort to identify all causes of autism, including toxic and pharmaceutical exposures. At President Trump's urging, NIH, FDA, CDC, and CMS are turning over every stone to identify the etiology of the autism epidemic and how patients and parents can prevent and reverse this alarming trend. We have broken down the traditional silos that have long separated these agencies, and we have fast-tracked research and guidance. Historically, NIH has focused almost solely on politically safe and entirely fruitless research about the genetic drivers of autism. And that would be like studying the genetic drivers of lung cancer without looking at cigarettes. And that's what NIH has been doing for 20 years. As a result, we don't have an answer to this critical question, despite the cataclysmic impact of the epidemic on our nation's children. We are now replacing the institutional culture of politicized science and corruption with evidence-based medicine.
It is 10 o'clock. You are listening to a news conference from the White House. This is about the taking of Tylenol or paracetamol during pregnancy. It is also throwing into doubt how vaccines are taken and when. So let's continue then to listen to JFK Jr.
We are announcing two important findings from our autism work that are vital for parents to know as they make these decisions. First, HHS will act on acetaminophen. The FDA is responding to clinical and laboratory studies that suggest a potential association between acetaminophen use during pregnancy and adverse neurodevelopmental outcomes, including later diagnosis for ADHD and autism. Scientists have proposed biological mechanisms linking prenatal acetaminophen exposure to altered brain development. We have also evaluated the contrary studies that show no association. Today, the FDA will issue a physician's notice about the risk of acetaminophen during pregnancy and begin the process to initiate a safety label change. HHS will launch a nationwide public service campaign to inform families and protect public health. FDA also recognized that acetaminophen is often the only tool for fevers and pain in pregnancy, as other alternatives have well-documented adverse effects. HHS wants, therefore, to encourage clinicians to exercise their best judgment in the use of acetaminophen for fevers and pain in pregnancy by prescribing the lowest effective dose for the shortest necessary duration and only when treatment is required. Furthermore, thanks to the politicization of science, the safety of acetaminophen against the risk of neurodevelopmental disorders in young children has never been validated. Prudent medicine, therefore, suggests caution in acetaminophen use by young children, especially since strong evidence also has associated it with liver toxicity. Some studies have also found the use of acetaminophen in children can potentially prolong viral illnesses. FDA will drive new research to safeguard mothers, children, and families. In addition to a possible acetaminophen connection to autism for pregnant women, infants, and toddlers, our research has revealed that folate deficiency in a child's brain can lead to autism. We have also identified an exciting therapy that may benefit large numbers of children who suffer from autism. Peer-reviewed literature has documented that up to 60% of folate-deficient children with ASD can have improved verbal communications if given leucovorin. I have instructed NIH, FDA, and CMS to help doctors treat children appropriately. Jay will help tell that story, which started with sound science, the kind that restores faith in government. This announcement also represents a historic collaboration between NIH, FDA, CDC, and CMS. We expect this to be the first of many announcements over the coming years that deliver actionable information to parents on underlying cause of autism and the potential paths for prevention and reversal. Finally, autism is a complex disorder with multifactorial etiology. We are continuing to investigate a multiplicity of potential causes with no areas of taboo. One area that we are closely examining, as the President mentioned, is vaccines. Some 40 to 70% of mothers who have children with autism believe that their child was injured by a vaccine. President Trump believes that we should be listening to these mothers instead of gaslighting and marginalizing them like prior administrations. Some of our friends like to say that we should believe all women. But some of these same people have been silencing and demonizing these mothers for 3 decades. Because research on
So let's bring in our science and technology editor, Tom Clark, an extremely significant intervention into medicines we're hearing there from the US Health Secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., not only about the use of paracetamol, but also about how vaccines are taken, Tom.
Extremely significant because it lacks any evidence to support the claims that have just been made in that room. And I think there will be public health experts, autism experts, and an awful lot, 5 million families living with autism in America, made quite angry by this intervention. Because let's just have a look at some of the details we heard there. Donald Trump suggested that there's no autism in the Amish population in America, which is demonstrably false. I've just looked it up, and it's lower than in the general population, probably due to how the Amish community report autism, given they don't have the same access to healthcare as a lot of other populations. He said there was no autism in Cuba, which is also not true. There was suggestions, and you've heard this obviously many times before, about a link between vaccines and autism, which there was a suggestion there, and this is a common theme from RFK Jr.'s Department of Health, that somehow there's a conspiracy among scientists to sort of block out debate and science and other things. There was a huge amount of work done to investigate the link proposed link between vaccines and autism, and no evidence for that found. And it's on evidence that science is based, right? It's not about what you feel, it's about what the evidence shows. And it is very true that a lot of mothers of children with autism might worry that it was the vaccine that caused it. Donald Trump there, RFK Jr. there saying 40 to 70% of mothers worrying that. But the evidence doesn't support that. And in so doing, I think this is quite a worrying development, given the potential harms that might result. The one thing I think that RFK Jr. did say that was accurate is that autism is a spectrum disorder with likely multiple causes. His ambition when he went into office, claiming he'd want to find the cause, the reasons for autism within 5 months. This is not something the scientific community has been ignoring. I mean, it's worked on at an enormous length, and it's not clear that there is a single cause. There's multiple genes associated with it. It's a spectrum disorder, unlikely to have a single cause. And what's remarkable about this announcement is they've settled on the one thing, which I think there's pretty good evidence is not an important driver of autism rates, and that is the use of acetaminophen, as they call it in America, paracetamol, we call it here, one of the most commonly used medicines in the world. And despite some studies suggesting a correlation between the two things, the best studies and the largest ones have found no evidence, which is why the health authorities in America up until now and across the rest of the world recommend it as the only safe medicine that women should use during pregnancy.
Yes, absolutely. And that has been critical for pregnant women, that they're allowed to take paracetamol. The British health regulator, the MHRA, as you were suggesting, saying there remains no evidence linking the use of paracetamol during pregnancy with autism, and that it continues to recommend it for pain relief. But he also threw into question there the use of paracetamol for children as well, and that is also a very critical means of getting temperature down in youngsters.
It's a remarkable deviation from what we expected them to talk about, which was links to autism. I think the community's pretty much settled on the fact autism is something that children are born with. It often doesn't manifest itself until further along their development, but I don't think there's any evidence to support the use of acetaminophen in children is linked to autism. So there are understandable concerns in America with an over-medicalised country that takes too many pills. But this isn't the way of going about getting on top of that. If you wanted to concern yourself with the harms of paracetamol, for example, you could look at the more than 1,000 cases of liver failure in America every year due to the overuse or overdose from paracetamol, unconnected with its use in pregnancy, by the way, the 500 deaths that causes. If you're concerned about the health and life of children, you might want to look at the leading cause of child death in America, which is guns. But understandably, that's not something this administration is particularly vocal about. It's absolutely remarkable. And I think any doctor watching this, that includes, I would imagine, nearly every doctor in America, would wonder how they're supposed to treat potentially life-threatening fever in a child without using something that lowers it, that's a safe and well-tolerated drug, if not given in too high doses, like paracetamol.